Okay, I dried this with a hair dryer. You can use a hair dryer if you have one handy. If there's a bunch of you in class that are trying to do this, I only have one hair dryer, so you guys will have to have patience to help each other out using the hair dryer. So we did the wet on dry, which got us a nice even color, the paper towel blot, which got us a texture. Also use it if you accidentally put something in a spot, and Sharpie underneath. Now we're going to do wet on wet, salt, and Sharpie on top. Alright, wet on wet gets us fuzzy edges, and it needs to be colors that will mix together alright. So if you think about the color wheel, make two colors that mix. So if I want to use red, I can do either orange or yellow or violet with it, or even blue to make a violet. But I can't put red and green together because those are opposites. They will make a muddy mess. Same with orange and blue. They are opposites, so I'm not going to put those two together. So plan out your two colors that you want to make. So I think I will stay with my green, and I will make, in a separate puddle, I will make, let's see, green and, we'll go green and blue. Alright, so now I'm ready to paint. I have my green and my blue mixed in my palette, two separate spots on my palette. So now I'm going to put some blue down, bring out my brush. Before that dries, I'm going to grab some green and put it right next to it, and you can see how the blue is running into the green, kind of bleeding together. That's the edges. You can also take some of that green and draw a line in that blue and watch it kind of mix. So if you want to mix colors like this, you can. I could also take some of that blue and put some dots. And my green's getting a little dry. Put some dots in that blue and it will spread out if that green is still wet. Spreading out a little bit, not a whole lot, but it is a little bit. Take that and go back on top of it a little. Yeah, right where they touch, they start spreading apart. So if I don't want those fuzzy edges, I got to make sure that it is completely dry. I use the hair dryer to dry it before I do my section right next to whatever I'm painting. Okay. Salt. I have just ordinary iodized salt here in a cup. And I'm going to paint with a color. I'll do red. And I have to move fairly quickly with this. And then I'm going to take and sprinkle some salt on there. And especially right here where I had that puddle, you can see it's kind of soaking up that paint, and it's going to make a really neat little texture. Add a little more paint so you can see it. See what happens to the salt. I got mine too dry. There we go. Now we'll let it react. Clean up my brush. Dry it off some. Let that react. Okay. And now I'm going to do wet brush first and then Sharpie on top. So a wet brush, again, paint it however you want. You could do wet on wet too if you wanted. You could do paper towel blot underneath the Sharpie. You can make whatever textures you want. Salt might be a little hard to draw on top of with a Sharpie, but you could try it. So I'm going to paint my blue. Take a little red, put that through there so you can see that wet on wet a little bit more. You can see how it makes violet. And it kind of bleeds out, mixes together, spreads out some. Now I gotta let that dry before I can do the Sharpie on top. Either that or I need to go use the hairdryer. In the meantime, I'm going to move on to our tints and shades of our colors down here. So I'm going to move on to orange. You do not have to do orange if you do not want to. If you want to do yellow, blue, or violet, you're welcome to. I'm just going to do orange because it's at the top. So I need to mix up an orange. So an eyedropper full of water in a new puddle, a new well, and I'm going to make an orange. So I roll my paintbrush in the orange, add it to that water. Now watercolor for the first layer comes out really light, and then it will gradually get darker. And that's what we're going to show you with layers. So I'm going to use this bigger brush because I have this whole area that I'm going to paint right here. It's a little too big. I'm going to go with this one. So I can paint this whole area right here. So I'm going to fill my paintbrush with the orange, start at the top, and I'm going to go across, drop down some, and back the other way, grabbing that puddle as I come back and forth. Now, I did not go back over where I started, because if I keep going over and over the same spot, I'm going to get little bits of paper peeling up. So I only go once until it dries. Then later on I can do that, another layer, once it dries. So there's my orange. Now if I did yellow next, it would be, I'd get fuzzy edges here. And I don't want fuzzy edges for this. I have some salts on my paper I'm going to get rid of here. So I'm going to do it the blue. That way I'm not touching my orange and getting fuzzy edges. If you did yellow already, then you can't do orange or blue, you need to do violet. So figure out what is not touching for your next one. So I'm going to do blue. I already have a blue mixed up. If you don't already have a blue mixed up, then do so. Mix up, again, an eyedropper full of whatever color you need. Add your color, and then do a wash. Nice even color. Keep pulling that puddle along. Kind of ran out of paint up there at the top. It didn't come up right. There we go. Now it's even. Okay. So I only went over it once. I'd recommend not doing that at all, but I did just because they couldn't see it. I could barely see it, which means you can't. Alright, so I did my first layer of those two. Then I'm going to skip down to the red-orange. And I'm going to make a red-orange. So, to make a red-orange, I take my eyedropper full of water again, new puddle, and I start with the lightest, so between red and orange, I'm going to start with orange. So I'm going to get some orange in that puddle. Clean out my brush, push it around, and then I'm going to get some red in there till I get a red-orange. So now I have both orange and red in this puddle so that I have a red-orange. I could have painted this whole thing orange and then the whole thing red, and I would have also ended up with a red-orange. But I went ahead and mixed my red orange in here, and then I'm just going to switch brushes because this is not the size I want. I'm going to grab my red orange in my paintbrush, and I need to try and get that puddle to drop down some because I don't want it to be left there that dark. And get that puddle to move over. Clean my brush out, dry it off, and I can suck up that puddle a little bit. And there's my first layer of red orange. Okay, so now I'm going to let those dry. Go use the hair dryer, and I will come back and finish up, do a second layer on all of those.